Hey everyone, how's it going? So last time we created this button right here, which when clicked will take you to the messages page. Of course we haven't created the messages page yet, so you'll see an error, but one thing I did forget to do again is to copy all of this code we just wrote into our CSS file. So if you haven't already done that, make sure you remember to take that and then replace it into your CSS file. If you ever don't do that, either you forget or you're copying me and I forget, and then you end up losing the code you've done. Remember, it's all attached to the lecture you're on, so just download the zip file attached to whatever lecture you're on, and you should have all the CSS code there. So if you ever forget and you've lost all your code, don't worry about it. Just skip to the end of the video or the next video or whatever, and just take the CSS code from there. Anyway, so let's go ahead and add the follow button now. So we're going to do this in the mixins file. So go back to here, open up the mixins.pug file. And this is where we're going to create the function which gives us the follow button. So what I will do is underneath there, right at the bottom, I will say mixin and then create follow button like this. Okay, so there's our function which will give us the follow button. Now this will take two parameters. The first one is going to be user, which is going to be the user that we're trying to follow or unfollow when we press this button. And the second is going to be a value called is following. Now this will tell us whether we are following this user or not. And then in there, we're going to create our button. So for now, we'll just create our button in here, and we'll say dot. And then what class do we want to use? Well, actually, we won't add the class here, because what we're going to do is change this class based on whether the user is following them or not. So if the user is following this person, this button's going to be different. It's going to be an unfollow button, right? And we're going to do that based on the class. So we're not going to add a class like that. We're instead actually going to add a class this way using the parentheses. So just above this line, we'll create our class. We'll say dash text, and this is how you create a variable in Pug. I don't remember if we did this already, but when you create a variable in Pug, you use a dash right here. So dash text equals, and then is following. So we're checking this is following variable which was passed into this function, and we'll say if they are following, that's what the question mark means. We'll make the text is going to be following, and if they're not following that person, so if is following is false, we will say follow. This is the text of the button, and then we'll do the same thing on the line below. So I've duplicated that line, and this one's going to be the button class. And this is going to be, if they're following them, the class is going to be follow button with a space and then following. And if they're not following them, it's going to hit this this part right here after the colon, and we'll just make the class follow button. Now to use this, we can't just use the dot. So previously when we had a class, we would use dot and then some class name like this, right? But we can't do that here when we're using a variable as the class. So we have to actually put it in the parentheses and say class equals and then the variable which is button class. We're also going to add a data attribute to this. So data dash user equals and then user dot underscore ID. Now this is going to be how we know which user we want to take this action on when we click the button. You'll see more about that, of course, when we actually come to implement this functionality. And then we're going to add some text, and the button text is going to be text. Now, of course, the reason we have to put it inside here again, just to explain one more time, is because the text part of the Pug element is not considered Pug code. So we need to actually put it inside here so that it knows to render some Pug variable, okay? And that's it. This function is done. We just have to call it now. So now, this button will render differently depending on whether we're following them or not. So let's call that function. So I'm copying this name, and I'll go back to profile Pug. And just to make sure it works, let's just pass it here. I will add in profile user, and then let's just say true to start with. Oh, I need the plus there. When you call a mixin function, you need to add the plus, remember? So remember plus, and let's see how this renders. So, oh, wrong one, I'll go back to here, refresh the page. Should see something. So we see following, great, that's right. And then, let me just check the class as well. So the class is following, great. So if we change this to false, oops, false, let's refresh the page and see that hopefully changes to something different. So now we've got only the class follow button, and we have the text as follow button, so that's good, that's what we want. So obviously we want to set this to true or false based on whether they're following that user or not. But at the moment, we don't have any concept of whether somebody's following someone or not, so we can't add the condition just yet. I mean, we can, but maybe we won't do it yet. I'll probably do that in the next video. So for now, we'll just pass false in there, or true, or whatever you want, and we'll come back and update this as soon as we can. So the very last thing to do is to go back to main.css, and we're going to copy the same style as this profile button one. So we can either go and give the button a class of profile button as well, or we can just put a comma and say dot follow button like this, and do the same thing underneath here. So comma, follow button, and then hover, and I'll do the same thing. So it's entirely up to you, but that works. So I've saved that, and let's refresh the page, and we should see the same style applied. Great. So there's the follow, and then of course if we change that back to true, we'll see it different right here, and we'll see it's following. Great.